Okay, let's do something called the lightning round, where we attack some FUD questions. If we were a game show, there'd be like a sound effect that go. But okay, first FUD that we are going to address is: will the Lightning Network be centralized?
I don't think that it's using the word correctly. So decentralized, to me, the big thing that I take away from decentralized is that it's minimal trust. And so Lightning is basically the opposite of a trusted system. You don't trust your peers. That's the whole design of it. So I'd say like this is actually one of the most decentralized systems that you are going to get, and even it might be too decentralized. Like you might not even need this amazing security for sending around a penny, but you're going to get it with Lightning.
Interesting. Yeah, I think some of the FUD that a lot of people had was surrounding highly connected nodes and calling them hubs and stuff. But talking with the Lightning Labs devs and on the Slack, they kind of expect. I think the general consensus is that they expect the network topology to grow in a scale-free model. And if that's true, then it shouldn't even really be that centralized.
I mean, I don't even think it really matters if it is centralized in terms of like it looks centralized.
Right.
Because like, what's the problem with centralized? Like, why don't you want centralized? Why don't you want decentralized? In the case of mining, like I talked about, you don't want centralized because it can create a tax where you lose money. But in the case of Lightning, if you connect to a centralized node or you connect to a decentralized node, it doesn't really, you connect to a big guy or a small guy, everybody's equals in this network. So I think that will make for a pretty well distributed network, and that the big guys won't really have much of an advantage. And so I believe what they're saying in terms of like how they expect the network to play out. I actually don't know. I don't know how the network will play out. I think it's like a market process. It's just going to have to it could play out one way in the beginning and then change over time. I think the most important thing is that everybody's equal in this network, and you have a very minimal trust in the other parties, and you even have like better characteristics like that it's faster, that kind of thing.
Got it. And I guess another FUD kind of along the same lines is, if I route my payments on the Lightning Network through hubs, what about privacy? Like, will nodes keep track of my payments and things like that?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say people have gone too far in both directions. Some people have said, "Oh, you have complete privacy in Lightning." That's not true. You have better privacy just by the fact that you're not broadcasting your transaction to everybody. Like that's how it works in Bitcoin right today. So if you're worried about privacy and you're using Bitcoin today, you are already having this privacy problem because you're just telling everybody, "Here's my transaction, and it's not encrypted, and everybody knows about everything." So Lightning starts to improve upon that situation because it's no longer just telling everybody about everything. But remember, you're still telling some random person you don't know about your transaction. So you're telling your peer, "Hey, here's this transaction I'm making." And that person, he might broadcast it to the world, or he might broadcast it to somebody you don't like. And like he's allowed to do that because he knows some details about the transaction. He has to know some details. So one thing he knows is the payment hash. And another thing he knows is like what peer he got it from, and then he knows which peer it's going to, and he knows the timing of it. So as far as privacy goes, I think it's only a step in the right direction. It's better because you don't broadcast it to everybody, but it's still not a perfect privacy solution. And there's a lot on the slate in terms of how that they can improve the privacy. So like that payment hash, they can make it change from hop to hop. And they've already done a huge amount of work to just make it private just from the get-go with the onion routing system where it's encrypted from hop to hop. So you don't know the full route and full path. So, I mean, it's just a complicated problem. And I don't think we'll never get perfect privacy. I mean, it's like perfect security. But it's a step in the right direction.
Yeah, and I think one of the I was looking at like a neutrino a few months ago, and it actually deletes blocks and information from the wallet, from what I understand.
Well, neutrinos has better privacy characteristics, but yeah, I mean, there's so many different ways that privacy can be compromised. That I wouldn't say any of these systems have super strong privacy. That's just still really a work in progress.
Got it. Thanks for clarifying that. Okay, so FUD number 3. You have to be online to make a Lightning transaction or receive payment, and the Lightning network requires nodes to be online 24/7.
Well, in order to receive a payment, you need to be online. But that's not so bad because people who are receiving payments generally, you're either a merchant and you can be online. That's not too hard. You already have to have your website online. And for people, well, if you're receiving a payment, generally, you could receive a push notification or something, and it's not like you have to be yourself online, but maybe your phone wakes up and does a little negotiation, and then it receives the payment. The other important thing in terms of being online is that thing that we talked about where maybe somebody's going to attack your channel. I don't think that's really going to happen because the penalties for attacking channels is so hard, but also, the way to stop that from happening is to have people be defending their channels. And for that, you need to have these watchtowers if you don't want to do it yourself, or you need to come online every once in a while. But that could still be your computer kind of wakes up, or your phone wakes up every once a week or something and does a little check and says, okay, looks like everything's good. And you still have security there.
Yeah, and one of the ways that I've kind of described it to people is when you go into a restaurant or something and you hand them your credit card, the credit card swiper, that's connected to the internet. So it's essentially the same thing. And so I don't see too much concern about the Lightning Network being online. Obviously, you should always practice basic OPSEC and make sure that to protect your private keys and stuff. And there's always some risk, I guess, when it comes to that. But I don't see it too. I don't imagine anyone uploading tons and tons of money and funding their channels that way.
Well, there's limits also. So the channels right now have hard limits about how much money you can put into them.
That's true. All right. Last one is that it's just too freaking complicated. The Lightning Network is too complicated.
Yeah. I think that Bitcoin is pretty complicated if you really start looking into it. You could easily make the case that all of these things are complicated. And they are complicated because what they're trying to do is something that is, something that it is a new thing, which is that we want to have minimal trust. And that's not something that you just get for free. The free thing you get is hey, I'll give you this $1, and then I trust that you'll give me the donut. And, that's an easy solution. But it's really hard to make it so that if I give you the $1, you have to give me the donut. And we need we need complicated solutions to make that possible. So the real question is can it be made simple for the user? So that's something that I've tried to investigate hands-on. Making the htlc.me service. I looked into can I make a wallet where it's very easy? And actually, I think that the Lightning experience from the development perspective and from the user perspective is going to be way simpler for the users. Even from something simple the user experience right now of paying a Bitcoin transaction is you take the address and you take the amount, you have to copy and paste those, you have to look to make sure that it's right, you have to figure out that this address matches up to this thing. You don't know if the address actually is going to somebody who you paid before. In Lightning, even from that start, it's designed in a way to make it easy because the amount is encoded right into the invoice. And the invoice is signed with the public key of the merchant. And that's the same public key that you've used before. So you could say, remember this public key. You've paid this donut salesman guy 50 times in the past. And you can even include the description. So you can write, this is for a donut, right in that invoice. So, all of the complexity, if the wallet developers are doing their job, can be hidden behind the scenes, and it can become so much simpler. You're no longer having to say, I'm waiting 10 minutes for a block and have to understand what blocks are and all that stuff.
I guess, the internet is incredibly complicated. How we are able to stream, live stream through voice chat and on YouTube, it's incredibly complicated, but nobody knows how it works. Or the people who program it and study it do, but I don't know how the internet works and how they broadcast all this information. And so I kind of feel like this just shows you how early on we are in the blockchain ecosystem and Bitcoin and Litecoin, and that the end game is like YouTube. The end game is for us just to use it seamlessly and not have to worry about all the nitty gritty details.
Yeah, I mean, I remember I watched this like YouTube video about somebody who wanted to eat a chicken sandwich, but he wanted to do all the work about making the chicken sandwich, right? You know, every ingredient he wanted to make all of the ingredients. He wanted to like make his own knives and everything just from scratch. And if you actually go into it, just having a chicken sandwich requires huge amounts of complexity, and that's like civilization that we're, you know, creating complex layers, and that's what Lightning is.
The Lightning Network and making chicken sandwiches. I love it.